the only human boy at the alien university, the favorite of all alien girls. Jalen had always known he was different, but he had never felt it as sharply as he did now. As he stepped off the shimmering transport platform onto the surface of Zyphora, the alien planet that hosted one of the most famous universities in the galaxy, a wave of awe washed over him. The air was filled with a soft hum, almost musical, and the sky glimmered with colors he had no names for, bright purples blending into deep oranges, dotted with streaks of silver. Floating above him were structures that seemed to defy gravity, towers shaped like spiraling seashells, bridges that hung in midair, and glowing walkways that moved like ribbons on invisible currents. It was unlike anything he had ever seen on Earth, or in any of the many worlds humans had learned about through space broadcasts. Jalen's heart raced. He was the only human boy in this university, a fact that felt heavier now than it had when he signed up. All the brochures and messages he had received before arriving spoke about interspecies cooperation, advanced technology, and cultural exchange programs. But no brochure could prepare him for the reality of being surrounded by hundreds of beings who didn't look, talk, or even think like him. Some had smooth, iridescent skin that shimmered in the sunlight. Others had multiple arms, wings, or floating orbs for eyes. There were beings that seemed to float without touching the ground, and others who had colors that shifted depending on their mood. He took a deep breath and tried to steady himself. He had always been curious and observant, traits that helped him make friends on Earth despite being smaller and weaker than most of his peers. Now, those traits were about to be tested on a galactic scale. As he walked toward the main campus hub, a gentle tug on his sleeve made him stop. He looked down to see a small, lavender-colored creature with translucent wings staring at him with wide, sparkling eyes. "You are human?" it asked, its voice musical and soft. "Yes," Jalen said, smiling nervously. "I'm Jalen. Are you a student here?" "I am," the creature replied, tilting its head. "I am Leora. You stand out," Jalen chuckled. "I guess that's one way to put it." Leora giggled, and the sound reminded him of wind chimes. "You will see many curious looks. All the others are interested." Jalen nodded, feeling both nervous and strangely proud. Being the only human in a university filled with intelligent beings from hundreds of planets meant that all eyes were on him. He had expected curiosity, maybe even some distance, but not the intensity of attention that seemed to hover around him already. The two of them walked together through the bustling campus. Students of all shapes and sizes moved along glowing walkways, some floating, some gliding, some walking. A group of tall, multi-limbed beings discussed a hovering globe of light that pulsed as if alive. Another cluster of students were bending small metal rods with gestures of their hands, shaping them into delicate structures that hovered above the ground. Everything about this place screamed that the limits Jalen knew on Earth no longer applied. "I've read about this university," he said, trying to sound confident, "but it's more than I imagined." Leora smiled. "Most humans are small, most humans are fragile, but your kind has something else. Curiosity, adaptability, that is why you are here." Jalen felt a surge of warmth. He wasn't here because of strength or speed or any special technology. He was here because humans had a reputation for thinking differently, for noticing things others overlooked, and for solving problems in unexpected ways. That was something he had always been proud of, but now it carried a weight he didn't fully understand yet. They reached the main lecture hall, a massive dome suspended in the air, its surface glowing softly with shifting colors. Students were streaming inside, their voices rising in a symphony of unfamiliar sounds. Jalen swallowed. He had chosen his first lecture carefully: interspecies collaboration and innovation. It sounded like the perfect way to make a first impression, even though he worried about how difficult it would be to follow the discussion. As they entered, a hush seemed to fall over the room. Jalen felt dozens of pairs of alien eyes turning toward him, and he realized with a mix of excitement and nervousness that Leora had been right. He stood out. Some stared in curiosity, some in amusement, and some with what seemed like admiration. He felt a blush creeping up his neck. On Earth, being noticed like this would have been awkward. Here, with dozens of beings who could see his heartbeat through the thin membranes of his skin, or so he imagined, he felt exposed in a way he had never felt before. The professor, a tall being with a triangular head and shifting blue patterns across its body, floated to the center of the dome. Its voice resonated clearly in the room. "Welcome, new students. You come from all corners of the galaxy. Among you is a human, rare and unique." Jalen's heart skipped. "Your task this semester is not only to learn but to collaborate. You will form teams across species, and together you will tackle challenges that no single species can solve alone." A murmur ran through the room. Jalen noticed that many of the alien girls glanced at him, their expressions curious, intrigued, or even amused. He had expected to be noticed, but not like this. The attention was flattering, though it made him even more aware of how different he was. Leora whispered, "Do not be afraid, they are curious, not unkind." Jalen nodded, grateful for her calm presence. He scanned the room and realized that forming a team would not be easy. Every student seemed extraordinary, with abilities and intelligence far beyond anything he had known. Some could manipulate energy, others could communicate telepathically, and others had skills he couldn't even describe. But for some reason, he felt a quiet confidence. He had survived being different on Earth. Perhaps here being different could be an advantage. When the lecture ended, students began grouping themselves for the first project. Hands or tentacles or hovering appendages reached out. Jalen hesitated, unsure who to approach. Leora nudged him gently. "Go to them," she said. "Do not hide, they will see what you have to offer." Taking a deep breath, Jalen walked toward a group of students laughing and sharing ideas. One of them, a being with silvery feathers and eyes like glowing orbs, looked at him curiously. "You are human," she said. "Do you understand collaboration across species?" "I try to," Jalen replied. "I've always found that listening carefully and asking the right questions helps, and sometimes looking at things differently can help everyone." The group exchanged glances, and then the alien girl smiled. "Interesting. You may join us. We will see if your human way helps." Relief flooded through Jalen. He had taken the first step. As they floated together to find a workspace, he noticed more alien girls looking at him with curiosity, and some even seemed eager to work with him. A strange warmth filled his chest. Perhaps, for the first time, being human wasn't a disadvantage. Perhaps it was something extraordinary. By the time they settled on a cluster of floating platforms to brainstorm, Jalen felt more at ease. Ideas flowed, and for the first time, he felt the excitement of true collaboration. Every species had something unique to offer, but he realized that humans had something equally valuable: the ability to connect with others, to inspire trust, and to see possibilities that others might miss. Hours passed quickly. They sketched designs in glowing holograms, proposed solutions to complex problems, and laughed at small misunderstandings. Jalen found himself amazed at the creativity around him, but he also saw how his suggestions, simple yet practical, were being received with genuine interest. He was contributing in ways no one had expected. As the sun of Zyphora dipped behind floating towers, painting the sky in colors that shifted with the wind, Jalen leaned back and looked at his new friends. For the first time in his life, he didn't feel like an outsider. He was different, yes, but in this place, difference was a strength. His heart swelled with a sense of possibility. Leora hovered beside him, her wings shimmering. "You are doing well," she said softly. "You are human, and humans are remarkable." Jalen laughed softly. "I think I'm starting to understand that." As he looked out over the floating campus, the glowing walkways, and the vast expanse of alien students bustling with energy, he realized that this was only the beginning. Being the only human at this university was not a burden, it was an opportunity. And somehow, he felt certain that the galaxy had never seen a human like him before. The first day ended with a quiet thrill, a sense that anything was possible, and the awareness that somehow all eyes were on him. He was the only human boy at the alien university, yes, but maybe that wasn't something to be afraid of. Maybe it was exactly where he was meant to be. And for the first time, Jalen smiled with full confidence, ready for the adventures that tomorrow would bring. The next morning, Jalen woke to the soft hum of Zyphora's sky. His room in the floating dormitory overlooked the sprawling campus, and he could see students gliding along the luminous walkways, their colors and shapes shifting in the gentle sunlight. For a moment, he just stared, letting the wonder of it sink in. He had survived his first day, made a few friends, and even contributed ideas that impressed beings from dozens of different planets. He smiled, realizing that the nervousness from yesterday had faded. Today promised even more surprises. After a quick breakfast, a strange but delicious mixture of glowing fruits and nutrient gels, Jalen made his way to the common gathering area. Already, groups of students were exchanging plans for the day. Some floated above platforms, others walked on thin air bridges, and a few hovered in midair, their bodies pulsating with soft light. Jalen noticed that the alien girls he had seen yesterday were waiting for him, and they waved him over with bright smiles. "Good morning, human," said Leora, her translucent wings fluttering in excitement. "Are you ready for today?" "I think so," Jalen replied, still adjusting to speaking naturally to so many beings with such different voices. "What's the plan?" "We start with exploration," said a new girl, her skin shimmering like liquid silver. "Professor said we must understand the university itself before we can truly collaborate. There are hidden labs, floating libraries, and surprises." Jalen's eyes widened. "Surprises." "Small ones," she said, laughing. "But interesting, you will see." The group began to move, Jalen in the middle, flanked by beings of all sizes and shapes. One of them, a girl with delicate, crystalline wings, reached out and touched a floating hologram of a map. It expanded, showing corridors that twisted into the air, spiral towers, and rooms that floated without walls. "This place is alive," she said softly. "It reacts to those inside. If you know how to listen, it guides you." Jalen was fascinated. On Earth, buildings were just buildings. Here, the very campus seemed to be aware, almost like a living organism, adjusting its layout depending on who walked inside. He noticed small platforms rising as they approached, moving gently to meet their group so no one had to climb or stretch. Leora whispered, "Watch closely. You will see humans can notice things aliens sometimes overlook." As they moved through the campus, Jalen observed the details. He noticed a slight shimmer around certain rooms, indicating a concentration of energy. He pointed it out to the group, and the silver-skinned girl's eyes widened. "No one noticed that," she exclaimed. "Only a human would see it like this. Clever." Encouraged, Jalen led the group through twisting corridors, finding hidden alcoves with floating books, tiny holographic creatures used for teaching, and rooms filled with interactive simulations. Each time, the alien girls looked impressed, exchanging whispers that made Jalen blush slightly. He had expected curiosity, but he had not expected admiration. In one chamber, they found a large sphere floating in midair. Inside, it was filled with shifting lights and swirling patterns. "This is the simulation sphere," the crystalline-winged girl explained. "It shows problems we must solve together. Each day, it gives a new challenge." Jalen stepped closer, studying the patterns. "It's like a puzzle," he said, smiling, "and I like puzzles." The group spent hours experimenting with the sphere. Each alien girl brought unique ideas, but sometimes the patterns changed too quickly for them to keep up. Jalen suggested small adjustments, tiny nudges in how the group manipulated the lights, and suddenly the patterns stabilized. The girls stared at him in amazement. "You have patience," said the silver-skinned girl, "and perspective. Humans are different and useful." Jalen laughed. "I just look at things in steps. Sometimes seeing the small pieces helps with the big picture." By mid-afternoon, the group had explored most of the floating campus, but a sense of anticipation hung in the air. There was a part of the university no one had yet entered, a series of suspended gardens said to be connected to an older, forgotten wing of the campus. Jalen's group decided to explore it, and as they approached, the air shifted. The gardens glowed with soft bioluminescent plants that reacted to their presence. Flowers opened as they passed, vines gently curling around their floating platforms. It was magical, and Jalen felt a thrill he could not describe. "This place is alive too," he said, almost in awe. "It feels like it knows we're here." "It does," Leora whispered. "It responds to kindness and curiosity. You will notice, human, that you affect things differently. Others may just pass through. You notice and interact." "That is rare." As they explored, they found strange fruits that floated in the air, tiny animals that glimmered like starlight, and pools of water that reflected not just their images, but their thoughts. One of the alien girls reached out, touching a pool, and it shimmered with a holographic scene of distant planets and flowing energy currents. Jalen leaned closer, and as he did, the water changed again, forming patterns he could interpret. "I think it's showing possibilities," he said, "ways things could connect or work together." The girls looked at him in surprise. You understand it? One asked. I think so, Jalen said. Humans like to see patterns, maybe that's why. The rest of the afternoon passed quickly, with laughter, wonder, and discovery. For the first time, Jalen felt that he wasn't just being tolerated, he was valued. His observations, simple but thoughtful, helped the group solve puzzles, interpret strange signals, and navigate the living campus. As evening approached, they found a quiet spot overlooking the floating city below. Lights glimmered like stars reflected in water, and Jalen felt a peaceful calm. The alien girls settled around him, talking softly about their homes, their studies, and the things that made their planets unique. Jalen listened, asking questions, laughing at funny stories, and sharing his own Earth experiences. You make it easy to connect, said Leora, resting beside him. We are curious about humans, but you are different, not only curious, but thoughtful. That is why others notice you. Jalen smiled, a little embarrassed but happy. I just try to understand, and I like learning from all of you. Learning together makes us stronger, said the silver-skinned girl. And humans sometimes see things we cannot. That is why you are important here. The group stayed until the first stars appeared in Zyphora's sky, glowing like tiny lanterns. Jalen realized that this day had been more than exploration. It had been a lesson in collaboration, understanding, and connection. For every alien girl in the group, he had brought something new, just as they had brought something to him. On the walk back to their dormitories, the floating platforms responded smoothly to their weight, rising and lowering as if the campus itself approved of their harmony. Jalen felt a quiet thrill. He was not just surviving in a place where humans were rare. He was thriving, contributing, and building friendships that could last across worlds. Before parting ways for the night, Leora looked at him. Tomorrow you will face another challenge, she said. But remember, being human is not a weakness. It is remarkable. Others may not understand, but we do. You will see. Jalen nodded, feeling a warmth in his chest. I hope I can keep doing well, he said. I want to help, not just watch. You already are helping, Leora said, smiling, and that is what matters. As he entered his room, Jalen paused by the window, gazing at the sprawling alien city below. He thought about the puzzles, the floating gardens, the shimmering students, and the way they had accepted him not just as the only human boy, but as someone they could trust and value. He had arrived nervous and unsure of himself. Now he felt ready to explore more, learn more, and maybe even teach the aliens a few things about humans along the way. The night on Zyphora was quiet, filled with soft sounds of the city and distant hums of energy from the floating structures. Jalen lay in his bed, replaying the day in his mind. Every glance, every question, every small contribution had reminded him that humans had something special. Even in a universe filled with beings far stronger, smarter, or faster, humans had the ability to connect, to understand, and to inspire. And as he drifted to sleep, he felt a quiet certainty. Tomorrow would bring new adventures, new discoveries, and new ways for him to shine. Being the only human boy at the alien university was no longer daunting. It was an opportunity. For the first time, he felt that he belonged, not because he was like everyone else, but because he was truly himself. And somehow that was enough to make him extraordinary. The next morning, Jalen woke with a strange mix of excitement and nervousness. He had spent the night thinking about the day before, the floating gardens, the simulation sphere, and the way the alien girls had included him in their discussions. Everything had been new, wonderful, and slightly overwhelming. But today promised something different. Leora had mentioned another challenge, one that would test not just his curiosity, but his ability to work with others in ways he had not yet experienced. When he arrived at the main courtyard, he found the group already gathered. Leora hovered near a small fountain, her wings shimmering in the morning light. Beside her were the silver-skinned girl, whose name he now knew was Selena, and the crystalline-winged girl, Myra. A few other girls he had not met yesterday were also joining them, each from a different planet, each with a unique way of moving, speaking, and looking at the world. The professor floated down from the central dome, its triangular head tilted slightly as it addressed the students. Today's task, it said in its resonant voice, will focus on communication and collaboration. Each of you will be paired with beings you do not know well. Your goal is to solve a complex problem together, using the strengths of all participants. Jalen felt a nervous thrill. These challenges seemed to grow more complex each day, and he was beginning to see that his human ways, curiosity, observation, patience, might be the key to succeeding. Leora floated closer. "Do not worry," she said softly. "You will be paired with others who may not understand humans. That is okay. You will help them and they will help you." The groups were announced. Jalen was paired with Selena, Mara, and two new girls, one with long, flowing ribbons of light extending from her head, and another with soft, transparent skin that seemed to glow faintly from within. As they gathered, Jalen felt the eyes of the others on him again. He had learned to ignore them during work, but the curiosity was almost tangible. He reminded himself, focus on the task. The challenge was revealed. A floating orb hovered above their workspace, filled with swirling patterns of colors and shapes. The orb pulsed slowly, changing in response to attempts at manipulation. "You must balance the energy flows inside the orb," the professor explained. "It will require teamwork, coordination, and creativity. No single species can solve it alone." The group stared at the orb. It was mesmerizing but also intimidating. The colors shifted rapidly, streams of light intertwining, separating, and forming intricate patterns that seemed almost alive. Jalen stepped forward. "Okay," he said, trying to sound confident. "Let's just start slowly. Observe first, then act. I think the orb reacts differently to each of us." The alien girls nodded, and they began experimenting. Mara's crystalline wings allowed her to touch the orb without touching the air, manipulating some of the light streams. Selena's feathers could channel energy in specific directions, helping shape the flow. The new girls added their abilities, creating subtle currents and patterns that combined with the others. Jalen watched carefully. He noticed that whenever he moved in a certain rhythm, the orb seemed to respond more smoothly. "Try this," he said, demonstrating a gentle motion of his hands. The group followed, and suddenly the orb stabilized for a few moments, its colors forming a beautiful, harmonious pattern. The girls gasped. "No one has tried it like that before," Selena exclaimed. "It works," Jalen smiled, feeling a surge of pride. He was helping not by strength or special alien abilities, but by seeing patterns and rhythms in ways the others had not. For the first time, he realized that being human, observant, patient, and flexible was a real advantage. As the day progressed, the orb presented new challenges. Sometimes it shifted too quickly, sometimes it seemed to respond only partially to their combined efforts. There were moments of frustration as the girls argued silently, their ways of thinking so different that they sometimes clashed. Jalen noticed it and stepped in gently. "Wait," he said softly, holding up his hands. "We're all trying, but maybe we need to slow down and listen to each other. Let's see what the orb does when each of us acts one at a time." The group hesitated, then followed his suggestion. Slowly, methodically, they took turns, observing the orb's response. Jalen guided them, suggesting small adjustments based on what he had noticed. With each step, the orb became more stable, its patterns flowing in graceful harmony. By mid-afternoon, the orb was completely balanced. The colors formed intricate, interwoven patterns that shimmered like a living rainbow. The girls looked at Jalen in awe. "Humans really are different," Mara said softly. "And clever," Jalen blushed. "I just pay attention. You all are amazing too." "I just notice things differently." Leora hovered beside him, smiling. "That is enough. Being human is enough." After the challenge, the professor appeared again. "Excellent work," it said. "You have shown that collaboration across species can succeed when curiosity, patience, and understanding guide your actions. This human student demonstrates that even in a world of diverse beings, humans can contribute in ways others may not predict." Jalen felt a warm glow. Recognition was not something he had expected, but it felt good. The alien girls gathered around him, smiling and laughing, sharing small compliments. Some teased him playfully, asking how humans thought of such ideas. Others were genuinely curious about his perspective. For the first time, he felt not only included but admired for what he could offer. As the group moved toward the campus gardens to rest, Mara nudged him gently. "You make teamwork easier. Even when things seem complicated, you find a way." "Thanks," Jalen said, feeling shy. "I just try to understand, and I like helping." The gardens were quieter than the day before. Soft, glowing plants and floating petals created a calm, almost magical space. Students could be seen in the distance, practicing energy manipulation or quietly reading from floating books. Jalen settled beside Leora, feeling the gentle hum of the gardens around him. "You are learning quickly," Leora said. "Humans adapt in ways we struggle to match sometimes. That is why others notice you." "I guess it's easier when you just pay attention," Jalen said. "I like noticing things. It makes problems easier to solve." They watched the sunlight shift across the floating gardens, casting moving patterns of light on the glowing plants. Jalen felt a sense of peace. He realized that part of what made him special here was not just his mind, but his ability to remain calm and focused, even when things were strange or overwhelming. As the afternoon passed, the group explored more of the gardens, discovering pools of water that reflected thoughts, tiny creatures that floated on air currents, and plants that seemed to react to emotions. Jalen's observations helped the group interact safely and creatively with everything they encountered. Every time he noticed a subtle shift in energy or movement, the girls turned to him, impressed and grateful. By evening, they returned to the dormitory. Jalen felt exhausted but happy. His mind buzzed with the day's experiences, and he thought about how much he had learned, not just about the campus, but about himself. Being the only human boy here had once felt like a challenge, maybe even a disadvantage. Now he realized it was a gift. His ways of thinking, seeing, and connecting with others were valuable. Before going to bed, Jalen stepped out onto the balcony of his room. The city below glowed with soft lights, floating platforms moved gracefully, and students could be seen laughing, studying, and practicing their skills. The sky was dark now, dotted with unfamiliar stars and two large moons that reflected in the shimmering rivers far below. He thought about the orb, the gardens, and the way his friends had looked at him today. For the first time, he truly understood something Leora had said: being human was not a weakness. In a universe filled with extraordinary beings, humans had a perspective and a way of connecting that could make a real difference. A gentle voice interrupted his thoughts. "You are thinking too much," Leora said, appearing beside him. "I'm just reflecting," Jalen replied with a smile. "It's been a lot to take in." "You learn quickly," she said, "and that is why you are noticed, not because of strength, not because of speed, but because of who you are. Humans are remarkable in their own way." Jalen felt a warmth in his chest. "Thanks, Leora. I think I'm starting to understand that." They watched the moons together, the quiet hum of the city around them. For the first time, Jalen felt that he belonged, not because he was like the others, but because he was fully himself. And somehow that made him extraordinary. As he went to sleep that night, Jalen thought about tomorrow. New challenges awaited, new discoveries, and more chances to connect with beings from across the galaxy. He felt ready. Being different was no longer something to fear. It was his greatest strength. And he knew that with curiosity, patience, and understanding, he could face anything that this strange, beautiful university, or the universe, threw at him. And so, as the stars shone brightly over Zyphora, Jalen drifted into a deep, peaceful sleep, ready for the adventures that awaited him. The morning on Zyphora began with a gentle hum of energy flowing through the floating campus, and Jalen felt a flutter of anticipation as he got ready for the day. The sky shimmered in shades of violet and gold, reflecting the energy currents that crisscrossed the air. He had grown more comfortable at the university, yet he knew today might be different. Leora had hinted that new challenges were coming, ones that would not only test his intelligence, but also his patience and understanding. When he arrived at the central courtyard, he saw that the group from yesterday had gathered again. Leora floated near him, her wings catching the morning light. "Today will be interesting," she said, her soft voice tinged with amusement. "You may find that not all beings think in the same way. Remember to listen." Jalen nodded, feeling a mix of excitement and nervousness. Over the past days, he had discovered that humans had a unique way of noticing patterns and building connections. He had solved problems the aliens hadn't even realized existed, and had earned their respect and admiration. Yet he also knew that being different sometimes brought unexpected challenges. The professor appeared from above, floating down with a slow, graceful movement. Its triangular head tilted, and its glowing patterns shifted as it addressed the students. Today's task involves interspecies cooperation in an unpredictable environment. You will work together to stabilize a series of floating platforms connected by energy currents. Each platform contains a puzzle that must be solved, but no single species can solve all of them alone. You must listen, observe, and act together. Jalen's eyes widened slightly. Stabilizing floating platforms, that sounded complicated, but also exciting. He had a feeling that his ability to notice details and think creatively would be essential. The group moved toward the first platform, which hovered high above the campus. Streams of light connected it to other platforms, pulsating in rhythm with the energy below. Jalen studied the currents carefully. He noticed tiny variations in their flow, subtle changes in brightness and speed. "I think the currents respond to movement," he said, pointing at a section where the light shifted slightly as he moved his hands. The alien girls looked at him with curiosity. Mara nodded, adjusting her crystalline wings. "Interesting, we did not notice that." Selena's feathers shimmered as she extended them toward the currents, attempting to influence the flow. The two new girls experimented as well, their abilities adding small adjustments to the energy. Despite their combined efforts, the platform remained unstable. It rocked gently, and the patterns in the energy streams fluctuated unpredictably. Jalen took a deep breath. "Maybe we're all trying to act at once," he suggested. "What if we take turns, observe what the platform does, then make small adjustments together?" The girls exchanged glances, then agreed. Slowly, methodically, they began a coordinated sequence. One would adjust the currents, another would monitor the changes, and Jalen guided them with careful observations. His suggestions were simple but precise, pointing out patterns and rhythms they had overlooked. Gradually, the platform stabilized. Light streams pulsed evenly, and the energy currents formed a harmonious flow connecting it to the other platforms. The girls gasped in awe. "You see things we do not," Mara said softly. "Your human perspective, it is different and very helpful." Jalen felt a small thrill of pride. He had contributed not through physical strength or special alien abilities, but through observation, patience, and thinking differently. This was the strength Leora had spoken about, the unique ways humans could connect and problem solve. The group moved to the next platform, which presented a new challenge. This one required them to arrange floating crystals in a precise pattern that mirrored an energy field above. The crystals were sensitive. A single wrong placement could send the platform tilting again. The girls began placing crystals quickly, relying on instinct and experience from their own worlds, but the pattern kept destabilizing. Jalen stepped closer. "I think we're missing a small detail," he said. "The crystals respond not just to placement, but to timing. If we place them one at a time, in rhythm with the energy, it should work." They hesitated, unsure, but followed his lead. Jalen tapped a gentle rhythm on the edge of the platform, counting silently. One by one, each girl placed a crystal in time with his rhythm. Slowly, the energy aligned and the platform steadied. The girls looked at him in amazement. "Clever," Selena said, her glowing eyes wide. "You think differently, it helps us all." As they moved from platform to platform, Jalen's confidence grew. He realized that being human gave him an advantage in situations where observation, patience, and creativity mattered more than raw strength or natural abilities. Yet, he also noticed small tensions among the girls. Sometimes their instincts clashed, or they disagreed on the best way to approach a puzzle. At one point, a miscommunication caused the platform to tilt sharply. One girl had moved a crystal too early, while another tried to correct it at the same time. The energy streams pulsed unevenly, and for a moment the group froze, unsure what to do. Jalen stepped forward calmly. "Wait," he said gently. "Let's stop and look at what happened. No one is wrong, we just acted at the same time. If we take turns and listen to each other, it will work." The girls nodded, and slowly they adjusted their movements, following his instructions. Within minutes, the platform was steady again. The energy streams glowed softly, forming intricate patterns of light that connected all the floating platforms. "You have a way of calming things," Mara said quietly as they floated to a nearby resting area. "Even when it seems confusing, you find a solution." Jalen shrugged. "I just try to understand. Sometimes slowing down and looking carefully helps more than acting quickly." The group settled on a platform above the campus gardens, watching the bioluminescent plants glow below. The air was filled with the soft hum of energy, and the distant laughter of students floated up from the lower levels. Jalen felt a quiet satisfaction. He had helped his friends, stabilized the platforms, and solved puzzles that no one else could have solved alone. But the day was not over. As they explored a new section of the floating campus, they encountered a maze of narrow walkways, suspended over a deep chasm filled with glowing energy. The paths shifted slightly as they moved, making navigation tricky. Some of the alien girls hesitated, unsure of the safest route. Jalen studied the walkways carefully. He noticed subtle differences in the glow of the paths, indicating which ones were stable and which ones might wobble. "Follow me slowly," he said. "Watch the patterns. The paths tell us which are safe." Step by step, he led the group across the maze. He pointed out subtle signs, a slight dimming in the glow, a change in the vibration of the walkway, or a tiny ripple in the energy field below. The girls followed his lead, impressed by his careful attention to detail. "You notice things no one else does," Leora whispered as they reached the other side safely. "Humans see patterns and think about others while doing it. That is why you are valuable." Jalen smiled quietly, feeling a sense of pride he had never experienced on Earth. Being the only human boy at the alien university had once seemed daunting, even frightening. Now he saw it as a gift. His perspective, patience, and ability to connect with others were strengths no one else had. By late afternoon, the group returned to the central courtyard, tired but triumphant. The floating platforms were stabilized, the crystals aligned, and the maze safely crossed. The alien girls were laughing and chatting, their earlier tensions forgotten, replaced by a sense of teamwork and camaraderie. The professor appeared again, floating down gracefully. "Excellent work," it said. "You have demonstrated not only intelligence but patience, observation, and cooperation. The human student shows that even in a galaxy filled with extraordinary abilities, humans have a unique and valuable perspective." Jalen felt warmth in his chest. Recognition had never been his goal, but it felt good to know that his contributions mattered. The alien girls gathered around him, teasing and laughing softly, asking questions about how humans thought and why he noticed things differently. As the day ended, Jalen followed Leora to a quiet terrace overlooking the floating gardens. The sky was filled with swirling colors of twilight, reflecting in the shimmering pools below. "You have learned much," Leora said gently. "But tomorrow will test more than your intelligence. It will test your empathy and creativity. The university will continue to challenge you because humans are capable of seeing what others cannot." "I think I'm ready," Jalen said, looking at the glowing horizon. "I want to keep helping and I want to keep learning." "You already do both," Leora said with a smile, "and that is why you are remarkable." As night fell over Zyphora, the campus hummed with energy and life. Jalen lay in his dormitory, thinking about the day's successes, the challenges they had overcome, and the friendships that had grown stronger. He realized that being human at the alien university was not a disadvantage. It was a unique strength. He thought about the puzzles, the floating platforms, and the way the alien girls had responded to his ideas. They had learned to trust him, to rely on him, and to value his perspective. And in turn, he had learned to navigate their world, to respect their differences, and to see that collaboration could create something extraordinary. As he drifted to sleep, he felt a quiet confidence. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new puzzles, and new chances to show what humans could do. He was the only human boy at the alien university, but he was beginning to understand that being different made him extraordinary. And with that thought, Jalen closed his eyes, ready to face whatever adventures awaited him next.